And I feel as though since I'm kind of seen that way, gives me a little bit different of a perspective than some of the higher stakes coaches. On top of that, I've always struggled as a player. I'm not like a supernatural poker player, so to speak. I've always had to work really, 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 really hard to improve, even at very small increments. And because of that, that gives me, I think, a little bit better of a perspective of how
Mhm.
most people need to learn the game.
What's up, everybody? I've got one of the biggest coaches out there, or one of the most studied guy in the game, I'd say. And he's got a very unique profile in poker. He's coached actually for over 2,000 hours. He's played over 50,000 online tournaments, I believe, 1,300 live tournaments, cashed for $8 million, won at least $1.5 million. He's been staked a lot of his career, and he's done a lot of staking. He's done kind of it all. He's also written for blogs and done commentary and done loads of shit. What's up, Ryan?
How's it going? Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've done a little bit of everything in the industry. Pretty much the only thing I haven't done is I haven't been a tournament director and I've never dealt. But I've done pretty much everything else. I've helped sites build tournament schedules and structures. I've been a coach. I've coached at most of the major coaching sites, card runners back when they existed, poker coaching. I was running once elite coach. I was coach for chip leader coaching. I've been playing professionally for 15 years, and I've grinded all the way up from free rolls to the largest tournament bind I played is a 50K. I've done that pretty much entirely backed, pretty much my entire career. Been with the same backers for about 10 years. Obviously, I'm a little bit different of a guest than some of the people you've had on the past, but I think that'll give me a little bit more of a perspective that more professionals are used to, and also give a broader perspective to some of your fans of the show. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, sure. Well, I prefer to have a different variety. It would be pretty lame if I think it would be lame if all I did was have like Crushers the game. I mean, they could say they're gonna say roughly the same things if. I mean, yeah, it's they'll tend to fall into a certain
Right.
polarization, which I think isn't great for an interesting podcast. But anyway, yeah, you
Right.
should have
I agree with
a
that.
lot of interesting perspectives because actually you've got one of the widest profiles I've seen. So why don't we talk about all this coaching, because it seems like you have a great reputation for coaching, at least from what I understand.
I would like to
Um,
believe that.
so tell me what makes from after 2,000 hours of coaching, what would make your style of coaching unique? And you say you have 100% satisfaction rate. I want to know what that means, and yeah,
So
what kind of results we're looking at.
for one-on-one coaching over the last at least 10 years, honestly, probably my entire career, I've literally had not a single person be like, oh, hey, I want my money back. Not one in, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sessions. In fact, one of my most recent students, before he booked a session with me, he booked a session with me in May. It was one of the last sessions that I did. He had booked a session a couple months before with a well-known high-stakes coach who charges more than 5x what I charge, and he thought that I was not just a better value coach, but that I coached him better. And I think part of the reason why that might be the case, sample size of one, so, whatever, it could just be his personal opinion or preference, but I've always had to work incredibly hard at the game to be, I wouldn't say good, but to be, okay. Not to, not to like demean my results or anything like that. But there's definitely a certain hierarchy that people have in their minds when they think of like well-known elite crushers, so on and so forth. People with $1 million scores or 10 million on their Hendon or
Mm-hmm.
elite high stakes online guys with, so on and so forth. And I'm definitely not seen as that. I know I am seen as a low to mid stakes grinder. That's where most of my profits come from. It's where most of my best results come from, with only a couple exceptions. And I feel as though since I'm kind of seen that way, that gives me a little bit different of a perspective than some of the higher stakes coaches. On top of that, I've always struggled as a player. I'm not like a supernatural poker player, so to speak. I've always had to work really, 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 really hard to improve, even at very small increments. And because of that, that gives me, I think, a little bit better of a perspective of how
Hmm.
most people need to learn the game. You know,
Sure. So, well, let's talk about that. So, what does that look like to you? Let's also, I mean, do you offer a money back guarantee if people
yeah,
aren't
always.
satisfied?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
For all
Yeah,
my content.
that's very honorable of you. So, tell me, for someone who's not a natural, what does it? Yeah, what does working hard look like? Like how have you adjusted to not being a natural to the game?
So to me, that looks like just being open to others' opinions on stuff, but B, not just taking it at face value either. So let's say I'm discussing a hand with some friends, and they say I should do X, Y, and maybe I
Mm-hmm.
did Z, and they're telling me I should do X or Y. My thought process isn't to just go, okay, I should do that. Instead, it should be, okay, why should I do that? How, like, does this decision and how is the way I'm supposed to analyze and look at this spot supposed to fit not just into, like, this exact spot, but into how my game works in general? And when
Mm-hmm.
I've done that over and over and over and over using GTO study tools, doing, you name it. Plus, I mean, I've been coached myself literally hundreds of hours. I've seen thousands of hours of training videos. Like, I just take in as much information as I possibly can and grind through it. And through just sheer hours of working really hard and taking in information, you're just going to improve a little bit at a time. And that type of work ethic required in order to become a decent poker player has also helped me since I've had to build my game step by step by step from the ground up. That also gives me a better perspective on help others build their game step by step by step from the ground up.
Right. So let's just say a new player comes to you and
Yep.
they come to you and they're like, "Hey, I want to learn how to beat, I don't know, like the NL10 or
Right.
something."
Well, I
Okay,
coach
so
tournaments.
do you have like a step by step process? What does it look like? How do you differ from other coaches?
So with brand new players, you need to give them some type of basic starting guide. I actually don't have extreme basic content on Learn Pro Poker, so I would first give them like a beginner's guide to poker, just so they learn the rules and the mechanics of the game. Tell
Sure.
them to go play some play money, get that type of experience in, that type of stuff. But let's say that they get to the point where they can watch a Twitch stream and they
Okay.
understand everything that's going on and they play poker regularly, but they're definitely losing players, and they want to start building the basic blocks of their game. Then, hey, well, we've got the content on Learn Pro Poker. I built the content to be very structured, very fundamentally sound. We have general theory content, we have pre-flop, post-flop, so on and so forth. And it's all built step by step by step by step, all short to the point videos that focus on singular topics. So essentially holding their hand through the learning process in terms of how theory works. But on top of that, attached to most of the theory videos are example videos, so application videos. So I'll teach a theory and then show them how to use the theory. But on
Okay.
top of that, if I'm doing a one-on-one coaching session with someone, I actually start from a broad spectrum view. First, I, explain to them, how poker generally works, where you make your money, what the goal is when making decisions, what pre-flop is and why it's a thing, how the flop works, turn works, river works, so on and so forth. And really go first from broad spectrum, just explaining to them to what the theory is, why it works that way, and how to implement it, and then going from there.
So what do you think that the high stakes players may not see that perhaps you've got, or not even necessarily when it comes to the game, but also when it comes to coaching and like what's going on at lower stakes? It doesn't have to be something super
Yep.
advanced in poker that I'm talking about here.
So the way in which you think about poker from a theory perspective is entirely different from the way you think about poker from an exploitive perspective, right? When you're thinking about
Hmm.
poker from a theory perspective, you're, worrying about balance and, range advantage and how ranges interact and, all these different factors that build what a decision process is supposed to look like. What your range should look like, what their range should look like, how you should be splitting your betting decisions, all that stuff. But when you're playing versus so it's your range versus their range. But when you're playing versus recreational players and you're trying to just play from an exploitative viewpoint, you're not thinking about your range really. You're thinking about how your hand wants to play versus their range. And when you're thinking in those types of terms, these are types of terms that it's much easier for most people to understand. Trying to teach someone, oh, this is what my range looks like, this is what their range looks like, this is where I'm at in my range, this is how I'm supposed to, that's just, it's really, really, really difficult and it's really complex. I've been studying this game for 15 years. I still find it incredibly difficult and incredibly complex. And it's something, while I can help people learn and teach, just most people need a ton of other work to even be able to start thinking in those terms.
Sure. So I got a question, and this is like
Yep.
useful for a lot of the demographic. Is having tried a lot of things, have you done different things because just the situation evolved over the years? Would you recommend anything, any way of doing things for the players starting out, or like the struggling kind of players that are trying to make a decent amount of money, like say like upper 5-figure plus type amounts? So I imagine a lot of people aim for, like especially in the U.S.
So if your goal, like if you're playing poker with the goal to be to like make 50 or 100K a year, you're playing poker for the wrong reasons, and you're getting into learning it for the wrong reasons.
Really?
Um, yeah, the vast majority of people who are watching this who are struggling in low stakes right now, they should never have a goal to be like, oh, I want to make $30,000 next year playing. I think that
Really?
is a terrible mindset to have, and it is setting yourself up for failure. And the vast majority of people who approach it in that way will fail. The
All
vast
right.
majority of
Well,
people who try to do it will just fail anyways. But especially if you approach it like that,
okay. Well, how should you approach it? You think?
your goal should be, where am I at currently in terms of what my game looks like? What studying have I done? What playing have I done? And then you can also think in terms of like, what's my bankroll, and what can I afford to play, right? Those four main things are like the
Sure.
main starting concerns. So then your goal should be not, what is my bankroll and how can I get it bigger? It should be, what can I do to improve my game and to put myself in the best situation possible in order to achieve success in the game and industry.
So a couple questions. First is what's a realistic, like reasonable goal for someone who's trying to succeed in poker? What kind of hours per week we're talking compared to the 40-hour work week, including studying and all that stuff? And I'm curious what like it seems like these guys decided to play because one decided that the live poker stuff was more valuable than the theory things, and
Yep,
they had a
yep. This
feud.
is
That's
what the
probably what
bet was
happened.
around. Yep, there was a huge bet
Right.
around it. Tons of people bet on it. Lots and lots and lots of money exchanged hands over it. It was a fun
And
sweat. It was really
so
cool. I enjoyed it.
So answer the first question that I gave you first, and then answer what I
Okay.
want to know is, um, what I want to know is, what's your opinion on on this match? Like, was one person clearly better than the other, or were they just totally lacking in the opposite fields, and that's why they kind of countered each other out, or what do you think is the meaning of this result, or is there any meaning
Okay.
of this result?
So first part. Okay, so I'm going to build an exact example, and this is actually one of the things that I did in this article as well. Let's say you are living in the city of Las Vegas, because I know it well, and I know the tournament scene and schedule here very, very well. And let's say you have a $30,000 bankroll, and your goal is to be making good enough money to pay your bills and do all that type of stuff. And by bankroll, I mean $30,000 poker bankroll, and on top of that, you have a year of living expenses set aside, minimum. So you have 30K for poker, call it 40K set aside for a year's living
Okay.
expenses. So 30K working roll. This person, if they wanted to go from being, say, struggling in low stakes to being incredibly profitable in them, I would say at minimum, especially to guarantee themselves a profitable year, they would want to play mostly online. They would have to be playing on site like WSOP.com,
Okay.
Global Poker.
All
I
right.
would
Cool.
suggest those as the main two because they're the most trustworthy, reliable sites that you have access to. I would strongly
Yeah.
suggest staying away from the other options because they
They're
are
also a
less
bit
legal.
softer, by the way.
Yep,
Let's
much
mention
softer,
that, and they
much,
cater a
much,
little bit
much
more to.
softer.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
important.
So, game selection, game selection, game selection. On top of that, while they should play some live, at a 30K bankroll, you don't really have enough money to play that much live. You could play some occasional 400s, but mostly you should be playing buy-ins 300 and under. So you really should very rarely put more than 1% of your bankroll into any given tournament if you're playing professionally. Just shouldn't really do it. And most of your
I
online
agree.
volume should actually be at a $50 average buy-in or under, so 600 average buy-ins. And the main reason why I would suggest starting that low is because you need to get in volume to gain experience to become a skilled player. You can't just study a decent amount and play a little bit and expect to improve a lot. You need to play a ton and study some. So let's say this person, let's say they started January 1st and they're going to play out a full 52-week year. I would say that this person, in order to go from being a break-even-ish low-stakes player to being a very, very, very profitable low-stakes winner and a solidly profitable mid-stakes winner, they'd probably want to work 60 to 80 hours a week for the entire stretch of the 52 weeks. I think the vast majority of players would need to do that. They would need to be playing online for about, I would say, 40 to 60 hours a week. On top of that, maybe 1 or 2 live tournaments a week, if that. And then on top of that, studying another 10 hours a week minimum. Stone minimum.
Okay.
And by studying, I mean watching, not just doing stuff like watching training videos, getting one-on-one coaching, working with GTO study apps, using GTO trainers, putting in tons of hours every single day. But on top of that, they also need to review their own play. So anytime they play a hand where they don't confidently know what the theory answer is, they mark it, record it, and either discuss it with friends, run it through a solver, or do a mix thereof every single time. And the thing is that, when you're trying to play poker professionally, you're essentially trying to be a professional athlete, quote unquote. Obviously poker's not a sport.
Professional athlete, but
Yeah, exactly. And if you're trying to become a professional athlete, you're in the gym every day. You're going to practice almost every day. You're working on the outside aspects of your mind and body every single day if you want to be competitive. And if you want to be competitive in poker, even at low stakes, you need to be doing the exact same thing. The main mistakes I see most low to mid stakes players make is that they're just not studying. They're not working hard. And, my IQ doesn't break the bank. And most people's IQs don't break the bank either. Yet there are a lot of incredibly skilled and incredibly intelligent people that are at the top of this industry. And not only are they going to be at a great disadvantage in, that side of things, they're also going to be in a disadvantage in that they just lack the experience. So you need to make up for that in some way. And the only way you can really do that is working harder than everyone else. Almost to the point of being obsessed with it.
Well, this is a constant theme I see over. I mean, it's pretty clear. You have to be obsessed is probably the most impulsive. If you really want to succeed at something, it's like pure dedication. It's pretty clear. So I really would be interested to see some data on this. If you have it, you might actually have some data with having taught so many people. You do.
Yeah, I do have some data. Yeah.
Okay,
I have
so
my own personal data. I've discussed plenty with others. I've looked at. Okay, so I actually was looking at all this stuff recently. So on SharkScope, this is for Global Poker and WSOP.com. These are the two main sites that I play online on, and I just wanted good data on it. The top winners for both sites for low to mid stakes, so buy-ins under $300, all run between 40 and 60% ROI, which is very high.
Right,
and that's the type of ROI you need to have consistent results online. You need really solidly high ROI. And the thing is that the only way those types of ROIs are achievable isn't by being okay or being good enough, being better than the recreational players. Your goal is to be right, but your goal is to be better than the best pros in the game in order to run high enough return on investment.
Well, is there any data on the main event ROIs? That's actually an interesting topic because I think that
there are bets on this every year. Yeah, so there are bets on this every single year. Chris Brewer just did a bet where in order for you to win the bet, it was they had to cash for 1.5x, right? And you could pick like 100 people. They needed to cash for, I guess, $1.5 million, right? The issue with the bet is in order for them to cash for $1.5 million half the time, they actually need an ROI of around 200%, which I actually think is doable. I think the top 100 players in the main event have over a 200% ROI. But I don't know if it's a lot higher than that. And while I think it's probably a profitable bet to take, I wasn't confident enough to take that bet myself, although I do think I probably should have, and I probably could have made a little bit of money on it. He and I have actually done a similar bet before, a couple of years ago, where I barely lost on it. And actually one of the people I was going to pick, but I forgot to, was Korai, who won it that year. So to me, like these types of I think that the main event's the one tournament where if I could confidently say the best players in the world have over 200% ROI, I would say that that tournament is probably it. And I don't
Well,
think
yeah,
there's going to be pretty much anything else, really.
it's
Like,
not
there's
really
no
a
other tournament
secret, so
that's
you
like that.
know. It's
Yeah, of
or at
course.
least maybe not in my world, but maybe to the
No, of course
podcast
not.
people it is.
Yeah, of course.
People assume that they have 300, 400% all the time. Actually, one important topic is people think they can like fold queens to ace king pre-flop. I mean, uh,
Yeah. So actually, we can discuss that actually right now. Okay, so
okay,
Queens versus Ace King pre-flop is I mean Queens is
57-43.
okay 57-43. Okay, so 57-43, you cannot pass on that essentially ever.
All
Bill,
right, thank
so
you.
there's a well-known poker mathematician by the I don't know how well known he is now, but by Bill Chen.
Bill
He wrote a
Chen.
book called The Mathematics of Poker. In that book, he actually showed the types of edges that when you edge pass on, what the required ROI is in order to pass that type of edge.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the book, he didn't factor things like the depreciating value of chips. He just factored it based off chip EV. But to pass on an edge like that, you need like over 100% ROI. However, that being said, actually, you should almost always pass on a 2% edge for all of your chips. You should almost always pass on it. If it's just a clean 2%
Really?
edge, you should almost always pass on it in tournaments. Yeah.
Even in the
And the
beginning.
reason, yep, even in the beginning. And the reason why is, and actually this, you can mathematically prove this. So Kenny Hallert, shout out to Spacey FCB, true champ. He wrote an article on his Twitter, I'm sure you can still find it on there, that showed the ICM values of stacks based off of when you enter or when you late register a tournament. And through that, he actually showed he ran tons of different ICM sims based off of different stack sizes and tournament depths and payout levels and all that type of stuff. There's also a player by the name of Derek Walters. Each year he shows what the ICM stack value is in the main event at the end of each day. And using those data, you can actually show that when let's say you buy into a tournament for $1,000, $1,000 after rake, and your starting stack, we'll just call it 1,000, just out of simple ease. When you double up and you go from 1,000 to 2,000, most people assume that your stack value doubles, but it doesn't. It goes up by an extra about 98%, give or take, right around there. It depends on a lot of different factors, but it goes up by about 98%. This isn't even factoring things like rake, which is a sunk cost. But if you take a flip hand one of a tournament and you completely ignore rake, and it is exactly a 50-50, so you have 0 EV edge in that, you'll lose between 1 and 2%. You just lose
Really?
1 to 2%. Yep, and the reason why this happens, actually, it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's say you're playing a 100 entry tournament where first place is winner take all. And then you take this exact same flip. It doesn't occur. There's, chips just have a 1-to-1 ratio. But
Right.
when you use a typical payout structure, so let's say 100 entries, first place gets 25% of the prize pool, then each time you gain extra chips, each extra chip is worth less. How much
Yeah.
less? When you double up, it's worth about 2% less. That's what the math works out to. And
Okay,
then
it's
each
just a
time you
typical
double up,
structure, I guess, right?
and then, depending on, assume all things equal. Each time you double up and you take a flip that is exactly at 0 EV, each time you lose to a 1 to 2%, give or take. That's just
Right.
how ICM models work in tournaments.
I want to talk about you. Apparently you came up with the whole add the ante to the big blind thing.
Nope, I did not come
How
up
did you?
with it.
Is that true?
Nope, I did not come up with it. I convinced Win and WSOP to implement it, but I didn't come up with it. Actually, pretty sure the person who came up with it was Kerry Katz at PokerGo.
Oh, really?
So
Oh, okay.
PokerGo was running, these high stakes tournaments. Either I'd played in one or a friend of mine had played in one and said, "Oh, this big blind ante is incredible." This was, I don't remember exactly when this was. Maybe this was 2017 or 2018, somewhere around there. 2016, somewhere in that range. And when I heard of it, I was like, "Oh my god, that's incredible! That's a genius! Whoever came up with this, smartest dude ever." I'm pretty sure it's Kerry Katz. I'm sure whoever plays the PokerGo High Rollers, they can confirm if it was him. Anyways, they were the first to use it. It was PokerGo. I heard about it and I was like, "Oh my god, this is incredible!" And then I looked at what their structures looked like. I took it to the Win. I know Ryan and Ray at the Win very well. I was like, "Hey, this big blind ante is going to be incredible for everyone. This is how it works. This is why it works this way. This is why it's going to be really good for you guys and really good for the players. These are some structures that I saw that PokerGo is implementing. I built some similar structures based around the structures that you guys used to have, and we should test using this and see if people like it. The either not the series right after I brought it to them, but the one after that. It's like some small, week and a half long, 2 week long series. They implemented it and it went great. When they implemented it and it went really well, I took that to Jack Effel at WSOP. I was like, hey, there's this big blind ante thing. I convinced the Win to do it. The Win absolutely loves it. You can ask Ryan and Ray about it. Why don't we build this out for either, a WSOP ring series, and if players really like it, then for the next WSOP bracelet series, we can build out all the structures for that. So I convinced Jack and helped him build the initial Big Blind Ante structures. We implemented it in one of the ring series, and then the next WSOP, he implemented it in the bracelet series.
Okay, that's cool. That's that's the kind of differences we need. I mean, we need it more in the direction of attracting more VIPs and giving them some kind of value. I think that's really where we're lacking for poker. But like stuff like this is good. Or creating more structures and things along those lines. I'm going to get into that in a second. I mean, actually, the idea of a knockout tournament, generally speaking, is a good idea exactly in that direction where it literally gives more value to VIPs, and also it's a new structure that people are dealing with. Although I'm wondering to myself, I was thinking, because of you saying like only 25% of poker players are profitable in tournaments, like how many... Seems like these knockout tournaments can't really have that big of an ROI, is my guess.
So the nature of knockout tournaments, whether it's a normal knockout, a progressive knockout, or a mystery bounty, caps ROIs lower and lower. The bigger the portion of the player pool that goes to the knockout, generally speaking, the lower the capped ROI is. It happens for a lot of different reasons, but in progressive KOs, it's the easiest way to think about it is like this. When I bust someone, and let's say their bounty is $100, so I pocket $50, $50 gets added to my bounty. That is $50 that is just removed from the player pool. Yeah. So when you look at this total player pool, let's say it's a $100 buy-in and has 1,000 entries. Since half the player pool is going to going to the progressive knockouts, first place in this tournament, instead of being the usual, 18%, 20%, so it's usually like 12%, 13% of the total player pool. And the more you cap what goes to first place, the lower the capped ROI is in the tournament, all things else equal. So best example of this is a satellite tournament. Satellite tournaments have much lower capped ROIs than any other type of tournament for the most part.
Really? I thought satellites were actually like immense value just because people punt so hard at them.
Yeah, they are immense value relatively speaking. You can run good win rates relatively speaking. You can run good hourlies in them because they're quick tournaments that end fast. But the ROIs in them cap very low. Like the best satellite players in the... Like a good example, let's say you're playing a really soft 1K satellite at the World Series. Super duper soft, like soft as butter. These things are incredibly soft. 1K bind to the 10K main. Like softest type of satellite tournament you're going to play, has an okay structure even. Best ROI in that field is probably 25%, which is like the same ROI as like, a large field, softer high roller. It's like 25% is cap. It's the best player on the planet beating it for 25%.
Yeah, but why do we care about the actual number of ROI? We care about the number of dollars won. You know what I mean? I would think so. They are good value, right? Or am I missing something?
They're good value, but the issue is that they're not high ROI. They're they're incredibly high variance, and they're low ROI, and they're pretty good hourly. Like the reason, like when I play online, I often play a decent number of satellite entries into tournaments that I normally play. Like, I don't really play many satellites into tournaments I wouldn't play without satellite in. Very rarely. Very, very, very few exceptions. So, but the reason why I add these things isn't because the win rate's high. It's because the hourly is high. Hourly is very high in them because they end very quickly. Even with the normal structure, they just end super fast. Yeah, so they're good for dollars, but they're bad for return on investment.
We care about dollars, I think. I personally, I care about the dollars. I don't care about my ROI. I don't give a shit about that. I'm gonna guess, huh? I'm gonna guess goes to the huh?
I was gonna say I've got a little bit of a counter to that. I think as a cash game player, caring about the dollars is what you should be doing. As a tournament player, caring about the ROI and kind of caring about the dollars is what you should be doing. It's like, 70-30 ROI to dollars. Well, for cash game, it's just dollar, dollar, dollars.
Well, if you know anywhere that will let us turn in a coupon with our ROI and get some kind of prize or whatever, let me know. It's not Chuck E. Cheese's, but yeah, I mean, whatever floats your boat. I mean, you can use it as like a credential for like coaching or something like that. Sure, like or
G-Bucks.
some bragging rights or whatever, which is worth something, I guess. I mean, I guess emotional currency is what we're all kind of after. Well, what about these? Okay, so let's talk more. Let's go back up for a second to these knockout tournaments again, because it
Yep.
seems like the ROI is like probably roughly in the field of these satellites. That
Yep.
is my guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the reason why I know this is, if we could back up a little bit, that Run It Once video that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
so that was from earlier this year. PKOs, I think so. Let's say if you looked at freeze out tournaments, the best version of the term study looked at, the ROIs in that were between like 40 and 60%. I don't remember the exact number. In PKOs, those exact same players, if you looked at the exact same type of structure, it's going to be between like 15 and 25%. So
Yeah,
essentially, it
that's
halves to thirds your ROI.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it does keep the VIPs alive a bit more,
Yep, exactly.
which is
So it
good.
circulates money. So they do a lot of good things. It circulates money. It also makes RTA a lot tougher, which is
Right.
incredibly important for online.
Okay. Yeah, this would explain why GG Poker's running a lot of them. GG's got a lot of insights into how to attract VIPs and keep them in. I mean, that's definitely one of the biggest things. They do it more through structural changes,
Yep.
is my understanding. Not so much through attracting as well. I like their branding. The branding's pretty good, I have to
They do a
admit.
lot of things that are somewhat predatory, but a lot of these predatory things that hurt professionals' ROIs increases liquidity and increases circulation of funds, which is best for them long term.
Right. Well, to that, I don't want to say like everything they do is good. They do a lot of good things, first of all.
Yeah,
But
definitely,
I
100%.
mean, predatory is one way of looking at it. I mean, you could say that poker is predatory on
Oh, definitely,
the
it is.
pros side in
100%.
comparison to chess, right? Like in
Oh yeah.
the chess has this massive edge, but there's no money in it. So, is it really predatory? Or like just it seems like a strong word in this case, right? Like I'm comparing chess to poker. Like there's no money in chess, now there's money in poker because the margins are thinner.
So let's say you have a tournament with like a 10 big blind starting stack, which I know they do these things. Realistically speaking, you would think that when you have a tournament that short of a starting structure and is a super turbo, that it would also have somewhat low rake. A lot of them just don't. They just have really high, or relatively speaking, they have fairly high rake. To me, doing things like that, doing things like anything that encourages players to play in a way that is incredibly rake, just incredibly rake generating and removes like the vast majority of possible edges in events, to me, that's somewhat predatory. That's just how I think about it and how I view it. To me, let's like a lot of poker sites when they run like 1 cent, 2 cent, 2 cent, 5 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent. Those games have by far the highest rake. To me, that's somewhat predatory. Like those games to me should have similar or lower rate than the mid to high stake stuff because you want this player pool to survive. And the
Hmm.
more this player pool survives, the more likely they are to actually circulate funds through mid stakes and higher stakes. That's like, to me,
Yeah.
a lot of poker sites view, again, this is me talking from a player's perspective, although I've had a lot of conversations about, with us, with operators, is that if you're going through players' win rates too quickly in whatever ways possible, then the issue is that you're not going to have liquidity. And if you don't have liquidity, then you need to bring in new blood, which GG Poker does an incredible job of that, and have those players add money to the player pool. Or if you don't have that happen, then you see player pools die out. Best example of this is I'm sure you've played in a lot of super high stakes underground games. The high stakes games that are underground that have a lot of chopped pots that are high rake go broke the fastest because it just kills the fish super fast. You know,
Right. Of course.
so to
Yeah.
me, it's about finding that balance between offering games and offering game types that are less profitable for professionals, but also aren't overly aggressive in terms of how they generate rake.
Well, there's other. Yeah, I mean, this is a big part of the discussion on here. I mean, of course, like it's good that you're talking to operators because almost no one is taking that kind of initiative. I mean, I agree totally. I understand. I want to throw in that I understand GG Poker's rate is actually kind of reasonable for micros, but I could be wrong about that. I'm
Yeah,
not
they might be.
100%
I don't
sure.
know. I just know of some of the things that they do seem not that wonderful to me.
Sure. Well, that's seems reasonable way
Yeah.
of looking at things, but they do lots of innovative things. I'm not gonna
Yeah, I
like
agree with
cast some
that.
hard
They do a lot
judgment
of
here.
really cool things. The Game of Gold was wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah, that was excellent. So, well, why don't you tell me this? Who do you think is making the biggest innovations, live or online, for poker that is best for the game? And are there any particular operators, within that scope? They can even be private clubs, by the way. Like sometimes private clubs do really positive things, and they could
Um,
be even models from private clubs that should be taken on and applied to larger ones.
I mean, I do think GG Poker does a lot of really good things. They're really great at innovation. Like in terms of innovation, they're by far the best in the industry. It's not even close. Like there really isn't a second
Hmm.
place. In terms of like online operators, in terms of not only just operators that I've spoken to, but people that I know either work for them directly or are pros with them or whatever. I think WPT Global does a wonderful job in terms of providing good games and doing so in a non-predatory way. With very good security. I think Global Poker also does a really good job on a lot of different things. I think in terms of like live examples, I think Triton Poker is ridiculous in terms of the amount of innovations and the stuff they bring to the industry, not only in terms of the events that they run, but largely just in terms of the quality of content that they provide and how much there is of it and how good their apps are and everything is around it. I think the World Series each year does a wonderful job across the board. Obviously, they always run into certain issues occasionally, but for the most part, Jack cares so much about the game and industry and really does a really great job to innovate. He really does. And while obviously, I thought payout structures need to be a little bit fixed in terms of registration, honestly, the overall payout structures I loved. I think a 2x min cash on 15% is great. I thought the overall payout structures were great. I thought the main event had a really good payout structure. I have like very few issues with WSOP across the board. Like each year they improve and each year they impress me. Win Poker does wonderful jobs. Poker Go, they do a lot of great jobs too. There's a lot of it. Another great example of this actually is Doug Polk at Rounders and the Lodge. Like you can tell that he cares passionately about providing a good product. Him, Andrew Neem, Brad Owen, they all do wonderful jobs and they care a lot about providing a good product. They recently had like a 400K overlay that they paid out of pocket. How many scumbags in this industry have tried to pull out of these big overlays and done all these different things? The Win
Yeah,
just paid
that's
out a
very honorable. I
massive
didn't know they
overlay.
did that. Yeah,
The Win
well,
just paid
props
out
to
a
them.
massive overlay. In
Who
the
did?
Win 10K last year, the Win. They paid out
Oh
a
wow.
massive overlay. It was one of the largest overlays in poker history. They didn't
Well,
need
it's
to
also
overlay. They could
one
have
of these
had one
things where they're
reentry per
probably pretty
flight.
rich, to be fair. But yeah, that's still a big deal.
Yeah, but it's more about they're trying to push the edge in a lot of different ways. Like the WPT December series at the Win, they're trying their best to innovate. They're offering really big guarantees. They're doing really cool stuff. Even GG Poker, with their series at the Bahamas. My only issue with it is that it's in December. Why not do it in January so I can also play it? Having it in January clashes with the December stuff here. Makes it super hard to justify going out there and playing anything. So I do
Yeah.
think there are a lot of operators in this industry that are doing a really good job and are trying to make the industry a better place. That being said, there are plenty of operators that aren't, and I think it's important that players don't give their business to those other operators.
So, which operators would you like to throw under the bus? If we're gonna
How
throw some
about
on top of the bus, on the
I'm
bus,
just
which
gonna
one's under the
list the
bus?
places that I like playing at for online. I like playing at. So WorldSeriesOfPoker.com. They have their software issues. They're struggling on their new stuff. They're working through glitches, so on and so forth. So they need work. But I the CEO of the company, she cares a lot about the gaming industry. She knows what the issues are. They have a lot more money now. They're working on it. It will improve. I have faith that that will improve a lot. I've had a lot of discussions with the CEO of Global Poker. I've had discussions with their head of security. I think they do an absolute wonderful job on both standpoints. WPT Global, they're doing a wonderful job too. The CEO of WPT Global, he posts regularly his blog. He posts about about the industry. He posts about what they're doing to keep game liquidity alive, doing things in terms of protecting recreational players and keeping the game, keeping
Yeah.
professional poker dreams alive. Party Poker does a really good job. PokerStars used to. I mean, they used to be great. GG Poker even does a really good job on a lot of different things across the board. Let's see here. Who else? 888 Poker. They're pretty good. iPoker, Winamax. Let's see here. Who else?
Yeah. Are there
Any of the
still?
USA legal sites are all really good.
Well, are there
So
any
there are a couple I left out.
are there any lesser known ones? Because a lot of these ones you're mentioning are like the major ones. That I personally am aware of most of these. You never know though.
Global
I
Poker is
personally only
probably the one that people know the least about,
Global
and WPT
Poker.
Global. Yeah, I would say both of those.
Oh, I think that one's kind of obvious, like Global WPT Online or whatever it is. Global
No,
Online.
just Global Poker. Global
Oh.
Poker. They're a
Oh,
USA
okay.
largely
Interesting.
facing site. They use something called sweeps coins. Essentially, you buy gold coins and they give you sweeps coins, and then you can convert the sweeps coins to dollars. It's how they get around a lot of U.S. legal laws. The way in which they operate is legal. They do their best to make sure that they can provide a legal product to U.S. customers. This is the process in which they go around doing it.
Okay.
And the every almost every tournament on there is a freeze out. All of them have very short registration periods. So their 218 Sunday major that I played last night, 30K guarantee. Registration's only open an hour. That's it, and it's a freeze out.
Cool.
Their
Um.
software, not the best, but their security is good. Cash outs are quick. I would say in terms of like what most viewers have access to who are watching this right now, assuming they're most in the U.S., Global Poker is going to be one of your best options. Unless you have
Sure.
access to the legal, the fully legal regulated sites, then I would offer those instead.
Well, you can move to like
Yeah,
wherever.
Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Nevada. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad idea for a lot of pros. Looking at like the possibilities of Italy or some shit like that. I mean, it looks like there's other options as well. I personally did a bit of research on it. Maybe some options in like Asia. I thought Taiwan
Yep.
was pretty good personally
Yeah,
from
so
playing there.
I've heard good things, but I don't know that market at all. I don't know those
Yeah,
sites at
yeah,
all. I
that's
don't
my
know those
shit.
clubs at all. I don't know any of that stuff at all.
I have a question. So, is there a specific reason why you like to be staked? Would you suggest it to other
Financial
people?
security, and coaching.
Okay.
Really, really, really good reasons for both. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's one
when
way of doing things. It depends on how you're doing them. I mean, there's like you can. I mean, that's one cool thing about poker is you can create adaptable situations so that you have a
Yep,
bit more
exactly.
security. I personally advocate ones where even the stakey has a little bit of skin in the game,
Yep.
just because you avoid this problem of
Yeah,
you get
there's
really deep into makeup.
yep, exactly. That is
I
the
don't like those
issue.
kinds of
Yep,
problems.
exactly. That is a problem that have been in, and obviously it creates a lot of negative incentives in turn. It not only does it create negative incentives for the player, it also creates negative incentives for the backer, because the
Right.
backer, the deeper the horse is in makeup, they have essentially a higher return on investment in each tournament that the backee plays because they get all of it instead of only getting half of it or whatever. So
Hmm.
they should technically be more okay with the player, assuming they're profitable, playing these bigger situations because it gives them better long term return on that dollar EV, and thus technically they're eventually going to clear makeup and so on and so forth. But the issue is that as these negative incentives reinforce each other, then the variance goes up and up and up and up and up. And even if you're someone like me who is, I mean, I am. Actually, my brother sent me a video recently. It's called Optimistic Nihilism. So instead of just being, essentially not just like being detached from results, but optimistically working towards being successful and not really caring about the end result. So working hard towards doing the right thing for the right reasons and doing your
Well,
absolute
what's the
best.
right thing? I
I
mean,
mean,
like,
that's the hard part, isn't it?
well,
But working hard, putting in proper volume, improving your game, using good game selection, so on and so forth. Putting yourself in opportunities of success, and then hoping for the best, but being completely okay if just the worst happens. And this is like how I've tried to build my mindset and grind over the last couple of years. And I feel as though I've done a pretty good job at it, but it still is, it's crazy, crazy, crazy difficult.
I'd like to go into talking a bit more about you because you have a bit interesting
Yep.
interesting persona for yourself. I mean, you grew up in Minnesota, which I know is it's actually like kind of pro environment,
Yep.
and there's it's like pretty isolated. So there's that. That's
Yep.
interesting in comparison to playing poker
The
in Las
area I
Vegas and all
grew
that
up
stuff.
in, yep, the area that I grew up in is about 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis, which is, the largest city in Minnesota. And it's an area of about, I don't know, probably about 40, 50,000 people now during the summer. And the next closest town of more than that number is about 90 minutes away. And then the other towns are, Minneapolis and Duluth. So, pretty lots of small towns, lots of small areas. It's very green, very nature forward. I mean, the area that I grew up in, lots of hunting, fishing, lots of summer cabins and all that type of stuff. The city area that I grew up in is very purple. Lots of pretty split between political demographics. But since, it's still in a somewhat small town in the Midwest, definitely not the most accepting, especially back when I was growing up. When I still lived in Minnesota, I don't think you could get, like, gay marriage wasn't legal in Minnesota yet. I mean, pot still isn't legal in Minnesota yet. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, it's
Well, that must
definitely not
be.
a liberal hub in a lot of ways. It votes blue, but it's since its blue centers are around like the three biggest cities. Overall, it's mostly a red state. So that causes a lot of this dichotomy of, yeah, it votes for, Democratic president every year, and it usually has a Democrat, governor and Senate and so on and so forth. Its House is almost always red, and its state Senate is almost always red. So it's a little bit of both. It has a pretty good mix. And growing up there was definitely a bit interesting. It's because of it actually didn't come out until I was 18 and away at college is because I was too concerned of being openly gay in a small town in north central
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Well, that's very understandable. That's what I was just thinking. Probably not an ideal situation to to be openly gay. But yeah, I would think that that would be quite a challenge, especially even like to go from that shift to being more open with yourself. Seems like it would be yeah, just a difficult situation. Haven't had to deal with more like far more mitigated situations than that. But yeah, I've never had that problem. But how's the experience in the poker world being gay? Because it doesn't seem like there's that
Great.
many like gay
Yeah.
people in the
Yeah.
in the poker world also. But
There's a decent number. I would say I know of. I would say I know of like 15 to 20, at least non-straight professional poker players.
oh, okay. I
So
mean, they're
pretty
probably
decent
gonna.
number. And it's not a lot, but it's a pretty good number, all things considered. And these are just ones that I am directly aware of. Not even ones that I'm sure there's plenty more. So like the thing is that I mean depends on a handful of different factors. But in terms of percentage of the population that is some version of LGBTQ, it ranges between 5 to 15%. In terms of the percentage of men that are gay, it's usually around 1 to 3%, give or take, depending on a lot of different factors, at least based off of what most stats coming out have been. The issue is that a lot of people, since there's still some stigma around being gay, or people at least are just don't want to make it. They don't want to be seen as that gay poker player, or don't want people to perceive them in such a way or whatever, for plenty of reasons, lots of reasons is why people want that. A good portion of people who are gay, especially in professional sports, just aren't out. Like for instance, in the U.S., there's probably 5 to 10,000 professional male athletes in sports. NFL, NBA, MLS,
Really?
NHL, baseball, so on and so forth. There's about 5,000 professional male athletes that play at that level. Of the ones currently right now who are playing professionally who are openly gay, I think there's like three.
Really?
But the
That's
total
interesting.
number of people that are gay, and of those 5,000, it's going to be between 50 and 150.
Oh wow. Okay.
And there's
Alright.
never been an openly gay active NBA player, NHL player, or so we have NFL now. I think NBA, NHL, MLS now. I think baseball player. There's never been an openly gay like who's made it in as a major league baseball player and been active on the roster. Almost all
Okay.
professional athletes come out after the fact. There's been
Oh,
very few
really?
exceptions. Yep.
Okay.
There's
So,
one player right now who is openly gay on the Raiders, or he was on the Raiders. I think his name is Carl something or whatever. I think he was the first openly gay active NFL player ever out of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of NFL players' lifetime. And of those, there've probably been 2 to 500 gay people who have played in the NFL professionally, and yet there's literally one ever active. That's it. And right now, there's probably 50, maybe a little bit less, but maybe between 15 and 50 gay NFL players.
but I have a question. So, is it that these players for sure exist, or is it that there's just very few gay people in them? Like,
No,
or there's just
yeah,
loads of people like,
these players definitely exist. Like
oh,
your masculinity has nothing to do with your sexuality.
okay,
Lots of gay guys I know are big, beefy, berry, the most masculine people you could ever imagine, have deep, voices, play sports, do all this stuff, completely gay. Your
okay,
sexuality
well,
has nothing to do with your masculinity. So, like, in the NFL, I mean, you might be a little bit less likely to go into it because, you're worried about people, disliking you, whatever. But maybe instead of it being 3%, which is about what of the population is, maybe it's 1%, which means that there's still, 10 to 15 players in the NFL right now who are gay. Just stats. It's just how the numbers work. So even if it's
uh,
1/3 of the general population, that's still going to be at least 10 to 15 people right now who are playing. In football, it's not American soccer. There have been tens of thousands of professional players, literally tens of thousands of them. From there's the Premier League, there's the Championship League, whatever. If you go down like the top 4 levels of professional football across the entire globe, I literally can't name a single openly gay player who was out while playing. Not one, out of
and they
like a
all come
hundred
out
thousand
after.
plus.
Is what you're saying? Once they quit.
Some do, very few. How
Oh,
many act like openly gay like football players? Not American football, so soccer players have came out after the fact. Outside of in the U.S., I can't think of one, not one. Yet there have been
okay.
thousands, literally zero. I can't think of a single one. In Major League Soccer in the U.S., there have been a couple who are not only openly gay after the fact, but have also played Major League Soccer in the U.S. while being openly gay. To
Okay.
me, it's
I didn't know these statistics, but okay.
the reason why this exists is a handful of different things. First of all, you know, people being accepting of, gay marriage and all that type of stuff is pretty new. In terms of it being like within public favor, even in the US, it's pretty new. If you look back in like the mid 90s, 80s, people's whether or not people were okay with gay marriage was probably in the 40 percentile, 35 percentile in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, that's kind
It's
of
only in the
rough.
early 2000s that it got over 50%. I
Right, that's
remember
still pretty rough.
what tournament I was playing in when I could finally legally marry my partner of 15 years. I remember the exact tournament I was playing in, where I was sitting in the US. So in like 2014 or something like that, that gay people could get married at a federal level in the US. It's only 10
Mm.
years ago. And you have people right now trying to stop that too. And like acceptance among the population in the US for gay marriages right now, it's only like 70%, 65%. And the US is one of the more liberal countries too. Right now, I legally could not visit over 100 countries, as in if I was gay in them, I would be imprisoned for being gay, and it's about 50 countries that would try to have me executed. Literally
I didn't
50.
know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the U.S.
Still
is a
pretty
bit more of an
rough.
outlier than it might appear when living in the
Yeah.
U.S. I didn't know that, but yeah, I didn't know it was like. It does sound like you probably get quite a lot of discrimination. I was personally
Nope,
curious.
actually, almost never.
Oh,
The
really?
poker community is incredibly accepting. They're wonderful, honestly. Here I show you my nails right now. I did them for Pride. I've got
Sure.
each color of the
Okay.
rainbow, plus then I've got some rainbow fingers. I received, and I've had these nails like this since start of WSOP. So during that time period, I played literally 55 days live. I probably played 600 hours with thousands of people. I got zero negative comments, not one.
Oh, I didn't know. That's good news. I do think that the
Actual
poker
zero.
players lean a bit quite liberal. I mean, they have to be open to this idea of playing a game for a living, which is pretty out there, I'd
Yep.
say.
But even
So,
like the recreational players, I received zero negative comments. In
yeah,
fact, I've
really.
like playing live poker. In terms of like people making incredibly homophobic remarks or things like that, I can only think of a couple of instances. That's it.
Hmm.
So I think poker players in general are very accepting. That being said, like I was one of the first openly gay professional players. There have not been that many openly gay professional players that have had a lot of success. There's only a couple I can think of right now that are gay that play at high stakes. So it's definitely a small group of players, but the poker community in general is very open and accepting and very welcoming, which is wonderful.
Okay, well, that's great news. Good news for tolerance
Yeah.
and being peaceful and all those kinds of things. And yeah, that actually surprises me. Thought
Yeah.
there'd be some bullshit going on, but
No, I mean, growing up in
whatever.
north central Minnesota, obviously not ideal, but thankfully my parents have always been very open minded, very accepting. I mean, my mom was more I mean, actually, my mom was probably, happy when I came out. I'm sure she knew from when I was pretty young. And then she was most upset by anything when I dropped out of college to play poker professionally. It's the most upset she's been about anything,
Right. Oh, oh,
which to be
okay.
expected. I get it.
Uh, that's in some ways edgier. Well, I don't know if I even go that far. It's definitely looks risky. But anyway, well, if there's anything else, let's wrap it up here. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about or promote, I understand you have a
Yeah.
community around uh, your coaching stuff, and I mean that personally interests me. The whole prospect of community.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think
I
that's really
can
positive.
share my screen, walk you through what we've been working on, what our goals
Yeah,
are
sure.
with it, what we're trying to do. This is a platform called School. So, Learn Pro Poker, this is a coaching site that I made with my business partner. We started working on it about 7 years ago ish and launched about 5 years ago ish. Give or take, right around there. When we
Uh-huh.
made the site, our goal was to make content that was structured and built in a way that content was easy to watch, was very, very well built, and was very short too. So the longest theory video on the site is 13 minutes.
That's
Application videos
cool.
can be longer because they're hand history review videos, groups coaching sessions, so on and so forth, right? But our theory videos are very short. And when I created this course, we were the only site that had short form theory videos built in a course fashion. We were the first to launch with this stuff. I came up with it, I built it out, and then within the next year or so, tons of other companies ended up doing the same thing. So this is the main site. It has all of our courses and content on it. We have general theory, pre-flop, post-flop. Then we have tournament reviews, one-on-one coaching sessions, and group coaching sessions. On top of this, we also built this community on this platform called School. School is a learning platform that has a mixture of things. One of the main things that it has, though, is this community section. It's kind of like what you would see on like Facebook. It's just a general feed where people can discuss things and interact, post hands, so on and so forth. You can tag things. So if you just want to look at general discussion, updates, hand histories, so on and so forth, you can do so. And one of the main systems behind the site is actually this point system, where if you make a post and someone likes this post, the guy made this post recently, got 12 likes, each one of these likes is 1 point. And then what we're doing is we have a leaderboard. We have a weekly leaderboard, monthly leaderboard, and all time. Our monthly leaderboard winners get the person who gets the most votes gets a one-on-one coaching session with me. Top 3 get a free month to learn pro poker, and top 10 all get a free group coaching session with me every month. On top of that, we also have classes on here. We have a couple different free courses. We have a general theory course that's entirely free, and a final table and ICM course that's free. And then we have some paid content. And for our newest paid content, it's about to launch, launching August 1st. We're going to have a monthly membership on School. Wait, what's that? We're going to have a monthly membership on School. Right now it's $47 a month, but it's going to be going up to $97 a month. That includes weekly group coaching sessions with me.
Okay, I mean, it sounds well laid out. I actually, I'm doing something, trying to create like a complementary sort of community. We have some coaching too, but yeah, we decide school seems like one of the better platforms to use.
Definitely.
And
So
yeah,
one
I
of the
like that
main
one because,
reasons why no, go ahead.
well, I like it just because Alex Hormozy seems like really incredible at what he does,
Oh.
and it's quite an inspiration. And I figured if he's partnering with school, it's probably quite a good thing to take a look at.
I like it a lot because it encourages interactions between users in a positive way. Like if you make a post, you don't get a point for it. You have to have someone else interact with and like that post in order to, get points towards, being an active member of the community. And when you have that type of
Okay.
positive reinforcement in a really simple way, it encourages people to discuss with each other. And, let's go way, 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 way back. Okay, so when I first started playing poker, I got into it, Moneymaker, yada, 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 all that stuff. And I was playing with friends. I was terrible. I was a fish. So bad at it. Awful. Then I started posting on poker forums and meeting other players and talking with them. So when I started learning the game, the way that I learned was through talking to other players. And then we fast forward to now, the main way I still learn the game is talking to other players. It's how I build my game and grow. Sure, I do, GTO study apps and training videos
Well,
and
yes, it's
coaching.
super important
But that's-
to help other people help you.
Exactly.
Or collaborate
Exactly.
with other people, essentially.
And the more you talk with other people, the more you have to explain your own thought process. I think part of the reason why I've become such a good coach and why I've improved a lot as a player is when I have to explain my thought process over and over and over and over, I have to really understand something well to explain it in a way that someone else understands it and can implement it and become better because of it. And when you're interacting with other players and talking with them on a platform like School or something similar, you get that. You get that back and forth interactions that can easily improve. And the thing is that our community on here entirely free. You get interactions with people for free. You get some of our courses and stuff for free. We're going to be doing free monthly group coaching sessions. And on top of that, I respond to every post. I've responded to every single strategy post, all of that stuff that's on there. So you can interact with me and you can interact with others in the community as well. I think it's a great platform.
Cool. Well, it sounds like it'd be good for some learning some poker theory. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your insights on tournament structures and the game structures, all that. I thought that was good stuff, actually.
Thank you.
The stuff with the analytics with tournaments, I think it's really important for players to know.
Definitely.
Yes, but thank you for your time, Ryan, and it's been fun.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I really, really, really do appreciate it. For those of you watching, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe and healthy out there. Best of luck at the tables. And really, thank you very much, Jungle. I really, really, really appreciate it.